Gary, can you hear me? Gary, you're muted, but I'm speaking in case you can hear me. That's when that was. Hi, Gary.
Okay, you hear me?
Yes, now the reverb's gone too. And that's
Okay.
the other thing, it's intermittent. Oh, Gary, I'm so impressed that you're here. When you said that you weren't going to be able to come, I didn't know why until I spoke with Bev yesterday. And
Oh,
I was going to run right over with flowers, but I decided to wait till after the meeting.
okay. I've got lots of flowers. I can tell you that.
You'd rather have something like chocolate. Let me
How
know.
how about a bottle of whiskey? Okay, I'm still trying to get this thing set up.
You keep
Um,
setting up. I'm gonna mute myself because we have Diego here, high-paid staff is here to help us. And the fact that we can see you is we've already made advances.
okay, I'm not seeing other things, the rest
Well,
of you. Okay. Ah, there's Nona.
yay.
Nona, did you write the material for our agenda?
Yes.
Yes? I can, couldn't barely hear. Anyway, a lot of good material there that we could use on the website too.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to working together. Really new things that must be useful.
Who we gotta have online here now? Gallery mode.
Okay, now I turned on my microphone, Gary. Does that help?
Yes, I can hear you now. I don't see anybody else.
No, it's early still.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, okay.
Yeah.
Still work getting it set up, I take it. I don't know.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
Oh, you printed. You're serious about this. Well,
No, it's good.
yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
You're in the very back room.
Gary, I'm so, you know what I can do possibly?
Yeah, Gary, if I
Yes.
email you everything, would that help?
You mean the agenda?
No,
Materials. for
just the
this-
materials
for
we're gonna
this.
look at. We'll look at them on the screen, but I have a feeling it will be easier if you actually
Okay.
open it, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I will try doing that.
So, oh, I've got an email problem. Why? Settings. They dumped my password again.
Okay, I've sent it to you. So
Okay.
hopefully that'll work. I don't know. Let's see.
Okay, thanks. It's lost my password, so I gotta fix my password again, email. I'll get it in just a second.
No hurry, we still have 24 minutes before we officially begin.
Oh, I thought it was at 5 o'clock.
In our old way, we were at 5 o'clock, but a few meetings ago, Terry Lee said it would have been, it's easier on him to make it 5:30. So I'm going to have a note clerk to Diego very soon to send to the consent calendar to change our official meeting time to 5:30.
They want to set up
I
something
have to
else.
send you an official meeting
I
time.
can't talk, no, you can.
Yeah, yeah. So I would address it to them because they're council people. Yeah. And then the deadline for that is tomorrow or Friday? For the council, for the council meeting. Which is tomorrow?
Send it to me, I'll just try my very best to get included today, because I think anything should have been.
I thought it was the Wednesday before. It's the Wednesday before for all the committees. I actually thought
Oh, that's
Friday
right,
was for
right.
the town council.
Exactly.
So I
My
thought,
mind is
okay,
all.
that's okay. That's okay. You're a father.
You're 100% correct, but yeah, definitely send this to me, so I can get back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. In terms of the cameras, you mean?
Yes.
So we'll be without the cameras.
Very different, but they all tend to be on, I mean, if they want facing, they want actively forecast. But for some reason, on. One.
And when this is off, what happens?
That should be pretty much.
Oh, I see. I see.
Is
This
there
Hmm.
some kind of an orifice that you have that slides open? Like a lens cap that you have to like activate?
It's such a good question.
I mean, it seems like
Wouldn't that make,
it's
wouldn't that
doing
be-
something, but not everything. I'm sure it's not manual. Yeah, it can't be manual.
Hard to
'cause
say.
they're-
you want to stand on the chair with wheels?
Yeah, right, that's. Hmm. Ah. That's interesting.
And here's the
Okay.
thing, I'm so like not tech set up that I don't even own a laptop. I could have brought my iPad, but I totally forgot about this piece. If I sit in front of this, is there a way that this has an eye that would see me? I see, I see.
Well-
Uh-huh. Oh, I see, I
Well,
see.
we can share this one.
I'll just
Yeah,
go
we'll
over
share my
here and wave
laptop.
to people. so
No,
they-
when you're talking, you just take the laptop,
Oh,
right? And then
But
it'll,
then it's your laptop, you might want to get set up. Okay. I'll
So,
just lean
okay.
over and wave.
yeah, so we'll just do that.
Okay.
The one thing, before you leave, if I could just see if I can share, okay? Again, this is a different, slightly different computer, so I'm gonna, you tell me if it's good to try. Mm. Okay, and now I'm gonna do slideshow. Okay, that's what I want to do. Gary, can you see a table on the screen?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and let me ask one other thing. Let me just try one other thing. Is it enlarging when I do that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I think we're good. Yeah, all right. I think we're good. I just want to make sure that people can see what's relevant.
Nothing should. Oh, I probably think,
Okay, and I'm gonna stop sharing now. And you were able to share and everything. Okay. I think that's worked. And if you see how the pictures were obscuring the upper right hand part of the slide just now? Is that a good thing? Right now it's obscuring everything, but if we toggle back. I don't think it'll be a problem. It's not a problem for that because, see, they won't see it.
Oh, I see, just you see.
Yeah.
Oh, good. I see. I see.
Yeah.
And she has a different word speed.
Yeah,
So at home, there you see.
Okay.
Well, let's do it even at this file in the record, and I think about something saying that it comes to the meeting. At the end, I press stop there, and then they shut the thing.
But all you need to do is you close out a couple of things, and you put that again. It's there. But
Okay, yeah.
you go to the first stage here, from the power, and you go to this stage. You might have to shut it down. This stage, you turn it over that.
Right, and then separately do anything.
Basically, you all need to hit this button, and then afterwards, you see this little like.
And my email won't work.
Oh, I'm sorry, got it. That's
Should be good.
we'll see. Maybe a different second brain than mine.
If I come in here and share something every week, I will book the balance. Yes, we gotta have more regular meetings. It's on, right.
So if you guys can definitely keep it off.
Oh, Liz? I'm gonna change over to my laptop. This thing's not working with it, Dan. Let's see. I guess I'll come here. I'll put- it's charged enough, I think, yeah. So I'm going to do. Okay, thanks.
Recording in progress.
This one. Can't hear.
Gary, I have
Yeah.
a feeling I know what's going on. I see you on the
Okay.
screen twice.
Yeah, I had
Two
to,
of- There are two of you on the screen, and I have a feeling if you mute one of the two, do you have two computers going? It's so interesting.
shut down. Okay, just a minute.
Do you
Okay,
know what I'm talking about? The second computer, do you see your,
yeah, I've got another one to shut down.
just for an experiment, try to mute yourself once.
So I got two cameras on me.
You're, it,
Uh,
you have two cameras, that's.
Hang on. Okay, I got rid of one. Now I just have to get rid of this one here. Yeah, my desktop is went south, so I turned it off, started up my laptop, and I can't get rid of this one picture. Are you seeing two of me? Oh dear.
Yeah, you look much more lively. The one on the top is kind of grayed out.
Gallery.
Oh, good, now it's gone. You've done it.
Okay. Yeah, I had two going at once. Okay, I think I got rid of it.
You did, and you've solved half of our problems.
Are you home now?
Hey, Catherine,
Yes, I'm at home.
good to see you.
Good.
Welcome.
So
You gonna stay
Yeah.
for a while? Well,
it's
well, I left handouts there. We don't have, we have, audio and enough. uh, Sorry. Yeah. Hey, Carter. How do you do? Do you know Catherine? Carter, Catherine? Yeah. Welcome back. Did you have fun in Europe? That's very succinct.
Gary,
is that you, Carter?
Yeah, how come you fell down and, did somebody kick you to break your leg?
I hate telling this story. I virtually went skating across my kitchen hardwood floor in loose socks and bang. So I fractured my femur, which is not an easy thing to do.
No, that's a bad fall.
Yeah. So I'm at home now.
Mhm.
And you're
Still,
non-weight bearing for a while?
uh, I'm about half weight bearing, 3/4. I can walk with a walker, put some pressure on it. So I'm still a
Thank
couple of days away from, say, walking sticks.
Thank goodness for that.
Well, this isn't much fun. I'm not going to do that again.
Gary, when you said skating across, did you really mean that? You were just kind of playing or did you
No,
slip?
no, I was seriously walking over to the sink, and my 2 feet just went straight ahead without me on top. Came down right on my hip. Turns out the common place for a femur to break is just a few inches below the hip. And the
Oh.
femur actually narrows a little bit. It's called the neck.
Yeah.
And we have a 90-year-old friend who did the same thing about a week after I did. Same place, same problem. So
Well, now you're structurally reinforced.
I tell you, the second day at the hospital, the doctor says, put some weight on that thing. It's never going to break again. Because they drill a hole down the middle of the femur and put a rod in there.
Yep.
They
Oh,
put
is
a
that what they
screw to
did?
put it together. And so I've got a steel rod in there to reinforce it.
Well, now you weigh a little more on that leg.
Yeah, no. So if I have a limp, it's because of the rod, heavy rod. So Carter, are you in town for a while?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. My daughter and her husband are kind of in and out. Actually, our daughter is our caregiver right now, but I want to set up something with you later on.
No problem.
I'll give you a call.
Just call it up as they'll set it up for you.
Yeah.
Well, Gary, I was serious about helping out. If you need somebody to take Liz to physical, speech therapy or something, I'm serious. I've got time, so call me.
Okay, I got that message and I
Okay.
got a couple of other offers
Okay.
as well.
All right, I'm sure you do.
And our
Okay.
daughter is here and
Right.
we do have a friend who went to a physical therapy place in Menlo Park, knows it well. She's offered to take Liz down there for her weekly physical therapy. So right at the moment,
Okay.
we're pretty well covered. Thank you.
It's 5:29, and so in a minute's time, we'll begin the meeting.
There's Betsy.
Yeah, I'm here. You're going to be hearing some voices, but Nona's very kindly sharing her laptop with us. We're experiencing some technology issues today. So some of us will be voices. Nona has brought her laptop. It's functioning and she's dialed in. So you'll be able to see Nona and me when there's an opportunity. Welcome guests. And I am going to bring this meeting to order. With apologies, as soon as we turn on the mics, I realize we're recording. And so those of us who know and care about Gary, all wish him well. And thank you, Gary Nielsen, member of this committee who's joining us remotely due to his recent fracture. But thank goodness he's on the mend and partially weight bearing. So let's take roll call of those present in the committee, starting at the other end of the table with Terry. You want to just say hi so people recognize your voice? And out of deference to people who are listening in, when we're speaking, if you remember to say your name, it would be helpful.
Hi, this is Terry Lee. I'm present.
Carter Ward, present.
Try that again and bring it a little.
Try it again. Beverly Lipman present.
Yay.
Nona Chariello present.
And Betsy. So for the record, we have two absences today, one being Gary and the other being Tish and Susubra. With that, I will ask if there are any oral communications.
Have one. Oh, she has one.
This is Linda Brothers. Is it on?
I don't think it's
I don't think it's recorded.
There, how's that?
Yeah,
My name is Linda Brothers. I live in Portola Valley Ranch, but I'm here just as an individual. And I know your Open Space Committee, not the Trails Committee, but I've had some conversations, especially with the Hawthorns starting to show up about use of our trails and things like that. And the point that keeps getting lost by many people is the fact that as a result of our bylaws, we are not allowed to have fences So anytime anybody comes into the ranch with their dogs or without their dogs, on a daily basis, I see dogs coming in from outside the ranch off of leashes. I had 2 on my deck last night that wanted to come into my house. And the absence of fences makes us particularly unusual when people use our open space. I have walked on all the Portola Valley town trails, and if you walk those trails, you will notice that virtually every private house it goes by has a fence, so that you're not in the private property. And I just kind of wanted to remind you all of that. We seem like we're lovely open space up there, but we own that property also. You're using our property. My understanding from members of the board of the ranch is that we have liability insurance through the town. But it's important for you to remember that about our open space. You're there under those circumstances. That's all I wanted to say. I was emailing with Betsy and thought it was useful to get it on the record. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thanks for showing up, Linda. Sorry you can't stay, but if you have a chance later on, you can dial in and listen to the conversation towards the end of our meeting about Hawthorns, and perhaps some of the report that I'll give will be reassuring. I don't know if you were able to attend.
As long as I can.
No, I mean, what's appropriate for you. And for the person who's just arrived, welcome. And there are handouts on the green table there if you should need them for the next agenda item. And Bev has an oral comment before that.
I do. I do. I'm Beverly Lipman. My husband and I have lived here in Portola Valley in Westridge actually, for 33 years. And we absolutely love the Shady Trail. It's one of the few trails off-road, as far as I know. Maybe it's the only one in the history of it. And we worked really hard to buy a property across the trail to save it, to save the trail. That was 2017. We raised a lot of money, but I love the trail. And I was just shocked and in horror to walk along it a couple days ago and see that somebody had sprayed a lot of herbicide. And I think the intention was to kill a poison oak, because there's a lot of it there. I mean, when I walk along, I just clip the poison oak that's going to hit people in the face, and but this was a lot of dead poison oak, but it was affecting some of the other native trees and plants that were there, and I was just horrified. So I called Justin Bixby, who's one of the deer maintenance worker at Public Works, and he said, well, the town doesn't use herbicides. So I said, no, who did this? And anyway, that's my comment. I'm still shocked and in horror about it.
Well, I'm glad that the chair of conservation is here today, and we can always discuss writing something on PB form if you think that's appropriate.
We'll think about it.
Yeah.
We'll think about it. Yeah. Okay.
And it should go to Trails and Paths too. It's on there.
Yeah.
Just as a reminder. Good point. All right. Well, then, I just want to give a chance. Oh, hello, Nancy. I am therefore going to move us through. The first agenda items is minutes. I have not received minutes for the last couple of meetings. And I was going to ask possibly, Carrie, would you be willing to take minutes today?
I'm sorry, did you ask me?
Why didn't I ask you, Gary? I asked for Terry.
Oh, Terry.
I know your hands are both working.
My hearing's
You're
going bad.
enthusiastic.
Oh.
So that's going to bring us therefore to the first substantive item of our agenda. And thanks, Terry, for being willing to record today. I want to give some framing to the conversation that Nona is going to lead on Ford. And so a quick background. Following the June 12th Town Council meeting, Having incorporated the necessary accommodations for rezoning, the planning staff at that point submitted our housing element back to the state for recertification. The state has until mid-August to respond, although we hope to and expect to hear sooner. As of now, I have no news since the tail end of June, and we've not yet heard. Meanwhile, the clock is not standing still. The numerically largest of the RENA 6 projects is at Ford, and it's for 50 very low income units. So designated on our inaugural open space parcel. Many of you have attended numerous town meetings where the future of Dorothy Ford open space, also known as Dorothy Ford Park and Ford Field, have been one of the many sites on the table. Though outside of this committee, Ford has not received any other group's undivided attention. So it's always up to the committees to do their parts in discerning constructive and timely means of weighing in with facts and perspectives such as we have. With some knowledge of the land and of its characteristics, the Open Space Committee hopes to add useful substance to supplement the town's understanding of what is on the ground here. The goal of the meeting today, therefore, is to settle some information that has been confusing and perhaps at odds with each other in order to more accurately and clearly identify some implied trade-offs and to evaluate them. And that brings us to Mona's presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Betsy. So this is really a continuation of the study session that we had at our last meeting in May. At that meeting, we focused on the conservation value of Ford open space and identified 4 major themes of conservation value that it has. I think those are in the synthesis that was included in the agenda packet. And so I won't review that, except to say that the riparian corridor that Ford open space is part of is really critically important in multiple ways. And it's a concern of the Conservation Committee and also this committee that that be protected going forward. And so today's meeting, today's study session is really about how that corridor is already protected by virtue of the municipal code, and also to understand whether or not and to what extent maybe development of Ford Field would impinge on that. So, you know, whether you're here because you care about affordable housing or conservation or a safe bike route to your work or playing baseball or hopefully all of the above, this is a chance for us to come together and try and share information and really understand what's likely to happen at Ford Field. And so in that spirit, what we're going to focus on right now is what are the restrictions on the use of that land, predating any talk about affordable housing, and also what does it mean to develop that area. So you all have a handout, which I'm also going to share. I'm going to share my screen now, which has all of the information that's in the packet. So if you can be patient for just a minute. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see a table in front of you. I'm going to zoom in on it for those who might be online and can't otherwise read the small print here. I'll zoom in when necessary. So the question that we started with, as I said, is what is the extent of the proposed development at Ford Open Space and how would it affect the riparian habitat? The table that you have in front of you is from the housing element, and it's from February of this year. And so it's pretty much the most current assessment of where we think we're headed with affordable housing. The area that's boxed in red, I've highlighted because that's the one about Ford Field. And now I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Oh, you took it. Yeah, no, that's good. Okay. So the boxed area is Ford Open Space. And as you can see, it's 7.55 acres combining Ford Open Space and the baseball field area, of which 2.48 is considered developable in this assessment. And it is considered so at a density of 20 units per acre with 2.48 acres that are developable, that's 50 very low income units. So as we started thinking about how to sort of view this prospect, we started thinking back to other versions of the constraints that were on this parcel. And so what you see in this slide are actually two different assessments of the constraints on Ford Field, Ford Open Space. One on the left is from 2022, and it was the initial constraints assessment. The one on the right is from the housing element. And the boxed areas are taken directly out of those documents. What we became concerned about as we tried to understand what the consequences of development could be was that in one assessment, there was 1.1 acre of developable land, and that's what's stated at the bottom there. Hopefully you can see this. This has 1.1 acre of developable land, and that is excluding the baseball field. It's taking into account the buffer along the creek. It's taking into account a 75-foot setback from the road, and also taking into account a 30-foot easement that is in effect on the parcel. Sorry, the screen is not totally behaving. Oops. Sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit. The panel on the right has what's in the housing element. And there it states that there is 2.48 acres of developable space. That's how we come to the table that I started with. And it too intends to eliminate the baseball field, impose a creek buffer, use the 75-foot setback, and also honor the 30-foot easement. So here we are kind of at loggerheads in terms of what is it really and how many units can we accommodate there. One thing you'll notice in these two images is that, and they are scaled so that Ford Open Space is the same size in the two images, even though they show slightly different areas. So they both have the same setback from the road. The one on the left actually uses a creek buffer that is based on the center line of the creek. That's the dark blue line, and the wide blue band is a 55-foot buffer on either side. The panel on the right from the housing element actually uses the parcel boundary, which is a dashed yellow line, as where you measure the creek setback from. And you can see, even looking at these two images, that gives you a different shape and a different size to the developable area. So we said, okay, how can we reconcile this? And what we did is we said, okay, well, where should the setback to the creek actually be measured from? And we went to the municipal code. The code states that for parcels of this size, or for any parcel that's a third this size or larger, the setback is to be measured from the top of the bank, and it should be 55 feet in width. Or it could be measured from the ordinary high water mark and then be measured at 60 feet from that location. As it turns out, as we talked about last time, Los Trancos Creek is a very deeply incised creek, and so it actually doesn't really matter that much in this case which measurement you use. It does in some places. Saucil Creek is not deeply incised in a lot of places, and there it might matter quite a lot more. So basically, both of the preceding documents that we saw actually measured the creek setback in a way that's not really consistent with what the code says. And we'll see why that makes a difference in a minute. So in order to think about this sort of in the context of creek protection that we talked about last time, we went to aerial photographs and also shaded relief, terrain relief to see where is the creek? You can't really see it in the aerial photos, obviously, because of all the tree cover. The tree cover is, of course, really important. It's what keeps the creek water cool and allows animals to live there. It does so many things. It stabilizes the creek, but you can't see it you can't see the creek in the aerial photos. So the shaded relief that you see on the right is from publicly accessible data from Santa Clara County and San Mateo County. They both have LiDAR-derived terrain relief. And you can see in this image quite clearly where the creek is and where the top of the bank is. So that's where we're supposed to be measuring the setback from. In this image and in the following images, you'll see the aerial on the left and the shaded relief on the right, looking at exactly the same thing, just so you can sort of, see the images that you're familiar with, but also understand a little bit more about the terrain. So in this next panel, we've added, you can see the parcel boundary in yellow, the creek in the bottom of the sinuous channel, and the top of bank is the white line. The top of bank is actually also public data from Santa Clara County. Santa Clara County has delineated the top of bank of every creek in their county. San Mateo County may have done it as well, but we couldn't find the data for that. So this is taken directly from Santa Clara County. And you can see, even looking in this image, I'll zoom in just a little. So this is what it looks like. This is what the creek looks like. And in sort of terrain, I can slide over, but you wouldn't see it. And one of the things you get a feel for here is just how big a difference it can make where you measure the setback from. So if you took this point on the parcel boundary and used that and measured 55 feet, you would actually still be in the creek when you thought you were in the developable area. And if you used the creek itself, which is what they did in 2022, you'd be over the top of the bank, but not by very much. So it really makes a difference in terms of creek protection. Okay, now if we add in all of the other constraints that every analysis has considered valid, we get on the other side from the forward open space from the creek, we get the setback from the road, which is 75 feet. We also have to the north, the 30-foot driveway easement. And at the south is the baseball field. And the baseball field actually has a deed restriction on it of 1.88 acres. So it's not only something people love, it actually would cost the town something to actually develop it. If you do this analysis, you find out that that pink area, the extent of that is 1.08 acre. So that's what's really outside the restricted area. Any questions so far? I'm hoping this is a chance for everyone to say, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense or whatever. I mean, this is a study session. I'm bringing what we have and, you know, we want to know where we're wrong, if we're wrong. So I really hope everyone will sort of chime in when they have comments.
May I chime in with a comment? I mean, this is so impressive, and so useful and completely timely. I just wanted to draw, you pointed out 20 units an acre, Nona, and I wanted to draw, perhaps all of you have attended all the meetings. I know some of you have. But for those who haven't, the town passed a 20-unit minimum, the minimum and the maximum units allowed at this site is 20 units per acre. So you can neither go below it nor above it. And that's quite relevant.
Yeah, that's really important. And that's part of the reason why Ford Field was considered so valuable to this undertaking.
A question here from Gary.
We hear you, Gary, chime in.
Yeah, so Nona, you've come up with about half of the acreage that's on our submission to the state. Is that right?
Less than.
1.08 compared to 2.48?
Yeah. Let me I'll jump ahead a couple slides and we can talk about that and then we'll come back to those other slides. But here's a close-in comparison. It's really pretty close to what they had in 2022. These are again scaled the same so that you can see that the area that's sort of pink is you know, the bubble on the left image, which is the 2022 constraints assessment, and they came up with 1.1 acre. You know, what's really striking about this in a lot of ways is that they actually had the creek wrong. I don't know why, but so that's one reason they got a slightly larger area. Anyway, go on, Gary.
Well, that was the question. Is the 1.08 acre, that's according to your map here, is that the developable acreage for the site?
So that's the comparable area to what has been mapped previously as developable, except that in the housing element, I don't actually, there isn't really a map that says this is the developable area. So it's hard to know where that number came from, I think.
I listened to some discussion. We can talk about this now at the end of your presentation. So if there, maybe I'll save what I have to say to the end, on the subject of what has been discussed and what I've heard concretely from planning and the housing element ad hoc committee.
Okay. I mean, it is the case that, you know, you could say, and certainly the town council could say, we want to use that 75-foot setback and change the width of the setback there. As it is, my understanding is that you can already put a parking lot there. So this is really building constraints, not paving constraints.
Mm.
I've also heard people say, well, we could reduce the width of the creek setback. And there I would probably push back because I think that getting any closer to a creek where you might be affecting the trees that are stabilizing the bank is probably not a good thing to do in a changing climate where there might be more atmospheric rivers to come and where you want to put housing for people who've never been able to live here before. So I would hope that we put the housing in a place where it is really safe from changes in climate and changes in creeks.
No, what I'd love, for you to do is go to the enlarged one and use annotate, and zoom, to draw a perimeter around the grouping of various heritage things, on the, because that.
Sorry. Let's go back.
So
Before we dive into the heritage trees, may I tag something on, Carter, to the conversation that was just winding up? Because, thanks, because I want you to have this, but it will not make sense later on. What I was going to offer is that at the June 20th, 2022 meeting, Laura Russell, our planning director, in conversation with the ad hoc committee, very much identified town commitment to preserving the 75-foot setback and the 55-foot setback from the creek. Because that's what she was hearing both from the ad hoc committee members and the townspeople, that there was high value placed there. And so long as the town continued to hear that, they wanted to honor it. And at the same time, to preserve the playing field for the same reason, because there was as much local feedback to preserving that, so that everything she presented was with an eye to preserving all of it. And so I think what we're grappling with today is we can't make that work. And so now what? So Carter, about the heritage trees, because I'm as interested in that as you are. I just want to tie up.
Yeah, let me respond to a couple things. In the planning terms, the developable area includes the setbacks. And so, while the resulting, pink or lavender plot is about the 1.1 acres, if we extend it to the property line from the 30-foot easement, down to the deed restricted area and go all the way, to the center line of the creek, which is the actual legal boundary for the parcel. The yellow line is fictitious. It is what's been described as the county boundary, but the county boundary and the parcel line is actually the center line of the creek. I do think that area probably encompasses about the 10 acres. At the same time, at the center of the pink area are very significant trees, and I've been disturbed since hearing that Ford Field was ever going to be plotted for housing, that the housing element completely, the plan completely obliterates those trees, without any reference, to the housing, to the site development ordinance, which have those trees being protected, and any, oak trees over 11 inches in diameter, to being protected. So, I don't understand how either the ad hoc committee or the planning commission or the council could have ever signed on to this. Because effectively they were in violation of the town ordinance. I think there's three. Yeah, but there are two very significant.
I think a lot of people have really voiced concerns about that too. And I share that.
I mean, and currently the zoning ordinance hasn't taken this into account, but there is a sunset provision that will take this towards the end of or middle to end of the green period. So finding alternative sites is something that I know that members of the town council are looking, and I would hope that the open space committee and the other committees will work hard together to locate those sites, because I think there's large consensus in the town that this would not be a good site. But finding the other sites is something that frankly is very, very hard, because the town doesn't own very much land or control that.
You got that
Yeah.
right.
I just wanted to respond on the comment about developable, because it's not defined in the documents, and I assume that there is sort of a common understanding The reason why we saw a discrepancy is that in 2022, it explicitly said 1.1 acre of developable, using that term. And then the same area was defined as having 2.48. And so it's, one can imagine all kinds of back of the envelope schematics, and one doesn't expect a refined plan at this point. But it would be helpful to know whether or not there really is enough land there when you factor in all the real constraints, which really aren't evident if you take into account the top of things.
I don't disagree. At the same time, I think that getting into the weeds on this property is of lesser value, to the effort. I think that what you've done is exquisite. At the same time, I think that, as the open space committee, you need to stand foursquare behind the protection of this space rather than, dealing with its potential for development. I think that the preparation of it, in my mind, is more important. And then helping with the search for alternative.
And I think that's exactly what, in advancing this conversation to the middle of the summer, we're trying to poise the town in a place to take some real action as they put together a second or a third, or for all I know, a fourth ad hoc committee looking at alternative housing sites. Before we go into that conversation more deeply, though, I'd like to invite Nona to complete the presentation, as I think the rest of the slides continue to make the case from other important angles too. Oh, is Judith online? Oh, good. Welcome. I see your hand in the air. Thank you. Catherine is looking at the screen and I'm not. Judith, please unmute yourself and
Yep.
after Peter.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry I'm not there. I'm on the East Coast, but one request, which is if mainly Carter is the only one. If you could speak a little closer to the mic, that would be helpful. I heard like 80%, but not everything. And then second, on the baseball field, just a note to follow up on that deed restriction is time bound. I think we had funding for that from somewhere that said you need to keep it in use as a baseball field for X amount of time, and that time is nearing the end. So I would suggest you get familiar with what any potential constraints there are. But I would actually be curious what developable land there is, assuming that deed restriction did not apply. And if you're getting to that in later slides, I'll hold that. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. And Peter. Peter Littman, if you are listening in and want to unmute yourself, your hand is raised, I think on purpose. Maybe not. Judith, is your hand raised again, or is that a leftover raised hand?
That is a leftover. I will withdraw that momentarily. There you go.
Good. Great. Thank you for your comment. We'll be on it. And with that, then I'm going to return.
Peter again, he's always got lots to say.
Oh, there he is.
Oh,
Peter, are you there? No, he's disappearing. No, he's not. His hand is not no longer raised. I think he just unraised it. So no, please.
yeah, I guess I want to respond first to Judith that I don't think we're really trying to sort of explore all of the options for developing Ford open space and the baseball field. And we're really just trying to we're trying to play catch up to where the housing element is in a sense and understand what the implications would be. And And I am aware, and I think we're all aware, that the deed restriction for the baseball field will expire. I don't know exactly when, but I know it's not too far away. But you can see from the image that's on the screen that if you factor in the creek setback, it takes out some of the baseball field, but there's there's more land there as well. And in fact, if you had used, the one thing I did calculate is that if you used the parcel boundary as the sort of creek benchmark, and included the baseball field, you actually come up with 2.49 acres. So, one can slice and dice these things in a lot of different ways to come up with acreage. So let me just conclude with a couple of other slides. Let's see, I wanted to do, let's go to this one. I just wanted to point out two other things that are important to understand about Forward Open Space and the baseball field. And what this shows, I took out some of the clutter, but added two things here, which is Alpine Trail and the Dwight Crowder Path. They're both located in setbacks. The Alpine Trail is in the creek setback, and the Dwight Crowder Path is in the 75-foot setback. And I don't know about you, but I don't think I've ever driven by Ford Field when there wasn't somebody using the Dwight Crowder Path. I mean, this is probably the town's most heavily used town-owned open space. And so I think it's really important to recognize that this is a treasure to everybody, including, people who ride bikes, people who watch birds, people who jog, people who walk. The last thing I guess I'll mention, and honestly, I don't know too much about this, but I know that at one point there was talk about using some of that 75-foot setback to conceivably widen Alpine Road for evacuation purposes. I've heard from some people that that's not really an option for the town, that the town could use the land for some things, but not for evacuation planning. Anyway, there's just so many things that kind of come together at Ford Open Space and Ford Field as a result of it being right where it is at the edge of town and at the edge of a creek and at the edge of so many things. So that's all I wanted to share at this point, but just to start getting us thinking about what should be our next question, if there are any more to address about Ford Open Space. I know everyone here is really committed to finding alternatives. And if nothing else, maybe this is a stimulus to go in that direction, as Betsy said. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to give the screen back to Betsy.
Thank you, Nana. It's just an excellent presentation, and it makes far more clear than it has, for me too, and I've been pretty steeped in this, where we are and how we get to where we need to go is front and center. So that I have a couple of questions here, and yet I'd be happy to call on anyone around the table. Do you want to, Terry, you sat up straight. Was that because you had something to say? No, okay. Okay. All right. Why don't I call on Linda Brothers first? Can you use your mic because Judith and others in the audience, Gary and
Linda Brothers, member of the public. I just have a question and I don't know the answer. If the road were widened, wouldn't the setback then be 75 feet from the new edge of the road? You seem to imply that the setback is set in stone and the road could widen into the setback. It's a view setback, wouldn't it, Carter?
well,
The setback, as it's currently constituted, is from the property line. And the road, only occupies a minority portion, of the 100-foot wide right of way. So effectively, the road could be widened without changing where the property line is.
or eminent domain to widen the road?
Well,
change
it's,
the property line?
it's town-owned property as it's currently constituted. So I think the town council would have the authority, to maintain the property line where it is, but I do think the widening that is potentially shown here, would be within, the actual current right of way, which is 100 feet wide.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions? Then one point of clarification, if I had known that, was you referred to Los Trancos as a deeply incised creek. And were you pointing to the municipal code? I mean, this is the way I took it, and I'm just checking whether this is how you intended it. The Muni code gives the owner a choice of using top of bank or mean high water mark. And as it's a deeply incised creek, you're saying that, I mean, one possible interpretation would be that there's not much difference between the two. Was that why you called it out as deeply incised, or was there another purpose for that?
In my very limited experience, my property backs onto Corte Madera Creek, so I have encountered this situation. If a creek is deeply incised, then there is usually a very clear top of bank, and so it's a reference that people can really sort of recognize. If it's not deeply incised, then it's not very clear where the top of bank is, and so that might be a reason to use the ordinary high water mark. In some cases, they're different, and in some cases, they're not, but you have to add another 5 feet to the setback if you use the ordinary high water mark. Do you want to go say more about that?
And the issue is if the distance between, the top of bank here and the ordinary high water mark is, 5 feet, then it makes no difference. If that distance, is more than 5 feet, then you would pick, then the property owner would pick the one that results, in the advantage, to the buildable area.
Wow.
If it's more than 5 feet, then you would pick the ordinary high water, mark. In this creek, because I have experience, in this creek, is that it's weird. Because there are some places where, the difference between the top of the bank and the ordinary, high water mark is probably 1 to 2 feet because it's essentially a cliff. And there are other places where, it's laid back, pretty widely. And that the difference, is probably in the range of 20 to 30 feet. And at that point, there would probably be, the owner, if it was a private property owner, would have, the opportunity to choose one or the other, but I'm not sure both. So, because the ordinance, isn't quite clear, on whether you can, blend the two.
Super informative, thank you. Very worthwhile. And then this was more of a comment than a question, though I would ask Judith Haskell to weigh in if you know more. As I was looking through the documents that I have been able to find on the baseball deed and the restrictions, I found 2 financial restrictions which combined to amount to slightly over $300,000, close to $350,000 in loans that were made to the town by the state. Same agency, 2 loans. And so there would be some obligation to pay back. And I don't know whether we'd be paying them back in nominal 2012 dollars or whether there's some acceleration due to inflation. But perhaps, Judith, you can inform me there and separate that restriction from the restriction that you mentioned and is time bound and perhaps expiring.
Well, I think it might be the same thing. We did receive, and that sounds like the right order of magnitude. But what I recall was that you would prorate the amount to be repaid based on the number of years relative to the term of that requirement, in order to figure out the amount you had to pay back. So
Got
if the loan were 300,000 and, you went 9 out of 10 years, which we are at toward the end of the term, there would be a greatly diminished amount, but I don't know what it is. It was discussed at a planning commission meeting in the last 4 or 5 years, so we actually had available to us the underlying document. So I know in the town records that exists, and Bessie, that might be the document you looked at. So
Okay, okay.
it might not be the only document, it's the only one I'm always aware of.
And let me correct myself. There were two, there was a very small loan and a larger loan from the state, but the other biggie there, it was more like 250 from the state and the
Mhm.
100,000 from the Alpine Little League itself.
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah,
one
I
of the-
didn't see that one. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you
Great.
for the facts.
Yep.
Um, So if there's any other discussion, I think that one point that I would like to make about where we go from here, and this is where I would appreciate again Judith weighing in and committee weighing in. Shall I take this opportunity, Judith, or would you like to describe the outcome of the last town council meeting at which you presented the post-adoption plan and the setting up a future ad hoc committee, which the name, as I understand it, it's an ad hoc committee that will look at alternative sites. And I'd invite you to
Yes.
describe it, as I think you'll get it more accurate, but I'd plunge ahead otherwise.
Yeah. No, briefly, I don't have all of the details in front of me right now, but briefly, toward the end of the summer, Mary and I, as the outreach subcommittee, which we're trying to explore who might be interested in participating in an alternative site that could possibly serve as an alternative to Dorothy Ford Park. Who wants to remain in that process, and then hand that information off after working with the parcel owners who were comfortable with a certain level of detail being passed on toward a more public process, get an ad hoc committee constituted and started. My recollection offhand was in September, but it's certainly not before that. So that will be the point at which we really need to start analyzing at a more in-depth level alternatives, what they look like. So your work, which is obviously a lot of hard work and good work, I think we should plan on factoring in these analyses and other, related facts that you may come up with between now and then, into the committee, as part of the overall landscape of what we're trying to accomplish. What is in fact open at Dorothy Ford Park as available, and within whatever the town planner and the town attorney can help us confirm. And then what are the alternatives to fill those slots in our housing element? That's the general gist of the task and the timing. Let me know if you have questions. I'm sure I'm leaving things out and I just don't have them easily at hand, but I'm happy to follow up.
No, that's super helpful and much more to the point. Any other questions around the table about about that process and how we can support it with more information on Ford?
I don't have.
Good. Good. Then I think we will wrap it up from entertaining anything in the audience, or we will be moving on to the last agenda item, with all due thanks to Nona for these fabulous maps, the best cartographer I know in person. So that brings us, do you have anything?
Can I share one more thing?
another map to share.
Yeah, 1 minute.
Mhm.
Sorry, this is a little slow. Okay, thought maybe I would just follow up on Carter's really important comment about the really majestic valley oaks that are present in Ford Open Space. This is a side-by-side set of images from 1930 on the left and 2020 on the right, with a green arrow pointing to the pair of valley oaks that are in that remnant of oak savanna now. Clearly, they were almost as big almost 100 years ago as they are now. And so I think a lot of people came to this question saying, how can we possibly even consider cutting those down, right? And that's actually where I came into this as well, to be honest. And it wasn't really until I started looking at the creek that I realized how crucial the creek is. You know, those trees could fall down. And we're seeing a lot of trees fall down in town. And so I realized that I had to start thinking beyond those trees when we think about how to plan for this landscape. And the creek will be here hopefully longer than those trees even. So as important as they aren't, and they are an indication of the alluvial soil that's present there as a result of the history of the creek. So it's really, you know, it's a really rich story, is I guess what I'm trying to say.
It's a hugely rich story and about which so many of us, we are so identified with those trees coming and going. It's an emotional subject. And so I won't cast forward. I'll stay in the moment because the trees are there and I'm here. So thank
Did you
you.
finish your comment about the trees? Okay.
Did you have something to say, Bev?
No,
Weigh
I
in.
just wondered if she finished
Yeah.
her comment about the trees.
Okay, so that brings us to the other and last agenda item in town, about which I have some notes here. And I think a few of you in the audience are quite interested in Hawthorns and what's going on there. So for the benefit of my committee, I have been the designated member of the committee to attend the Hawthorns meetings, and the last meeting of June the 13th, I will run through what the result of that meeting was. First of all, the overview of what to expect over the course of the next number of months. Next month in August, the public area working group results will be presented by Mid-Penn staff to Planning and Natural Resources Committee. That's a committee of 3 members of the Mid-Penn board. And so they will be the Mid-Penn staff will be taking and presenting the results to them. Following that, a month or 2 later, so I expect in September, October timeframe, the town council itself here in Portola Valley will hold a preliminary Hawthorne study session. And that study session will be certainly, there will be some number of Mid-Penn staff present to assist in unpacking all that they have been through. And then they will turn back to, Mid-Penn staff will turn back to their board, and it will likely not be until early 2025 that the Mid-Penn board itself reviews the ingress, egress, parking, and trails presentation and suggestions, recommendations by the POG. So that's what to expect. That's the rollout that we expect over the course of the next 6 months. What the POG group did in their final meeting, and this was preordained to be the final meeting since earlier this year. It was designated to be the meeting at which they were going to take votes. So this is votes on various approaches to the property and parking lot approaches, as well as trails. So let me describe the voting to you briefly, because it's going to weigh in when you hear a certain number of votes in favor, it's not, it's not a yes, an up or a down vote. There are gradations of 6. So if you vote number 1, so each of the 13 POG members would have a vote to make on each, then there were a lot of items. 1 is an unqualified yes. A 2 means I find the proposal acceptable of the best of what's available. And number 3, and I think that best of the available is a pertinent thing that we will hold on to as a town. Number 3 is I can live with the proposal, although I'm not enthusiastic. Number 4 means I do not fully agree with the proposal, but I'm willing to stand aside. And I will note any vote 1 to 4, mid-pen counts as supporting the project. Vote number 5 means I do not fully agree and would like the working group to do more work. And number 6 is I do not agree with the proposal and will actively work to oppose it. So if you don't vote 5 or 6, then you're considered supportive of the proposal. This is, that information was handed out in July 2023 of a year ago. So you can find that information in the materials there. So what they did was look at the trails first, and Linda Brothers spoke about this earlier, but comprehensively there were 3 potential trails, as well as they'd already decided that there was going to be a loop trail, and we shared information. Actually, I've got a picture of it here, and I will happily pass this down and around. There was a loop trail in purple here. It goes around. I don't think this is going to help, so I won't do it. The loop trail goes fully around the parcel, and there were 3 spurs that were proposed taking the loop trail down to intersect with Sweet Springs. They were known as 15, 16, and 17. 15 was at the low side of the property at Saddleback. 16 was approximately at Pomponio, and 17 also came down to Pomponio, but intersected the big loop trail higher up point. The trails 15 and 17, both were voted down. And so let me just quickly drill through how the vote. So in other words, the only trail that right now has the recommendation of the committee is Trail 16, the middle spur trail, which connects to Pomponio. The voting broke out into 2 parts. The first part was to be, should we construct these trails immediately? And part 2 was, should we construct these trails, if at all, after a year of observation, where they're paying attention to traffic, to foot traffic, and how much extra foot traffic is happening on Sweet Springs Trail. If it's a doubling, this was the proposal of a couple POG members. If there were a doubling, that would be a threshold amount. That was tossed out there. There was no agreement, full agreement on it, but that was proposed. So there were, for Trail 16, I'll take Trail 16 alone because it was the one that was the most popular of the 3. To open the trail immediately, there were 9 in favor. However, it was quite a weak pass. It received 3 1s and 4 4s. So you can see that, and a couple 3s, to 4 people that were voting straight out against it. So it was not a solid pass. That was for opening right away. However, looking at it and evaluating it for a year, received 13 in favor and 0 against. The other one, I hesitate to use up too much more of my time here in telling you the minutia, but the other ones were very unpopular. So 16 is looking like that's where we're going to end up with a Trail 16, if at all. I can continue to tell you about the parking area and the driveway locations unless there are any questions about that much information. So I will continue. As for parking, the parking area and driveway locations, there were two of the parking and driveway locations that advanced to final consideration, and they were options 9 and option 10. I included it in the packet that's online that you might have looked at before you came here, but I will verbally describe them. Parking lot number 9 you would enter the existing driveway, which lies opposite Roberts Market, drive up the driveway a very short piece, peel off to the right, so you're driving parallel to the Alpine Road and towards the intersection with Portola Road. And it would be a very long driveway there to accommodate a parking lot there to accommodate the 50 cars. That was option 9. And during our site tour in March, we were able to stand there with the POG group and interested members of the community and actually imagine it. And to my eye, it looked like a lot of cut and fill. And that's something that the Planning Commission will be looking at more Planning Commission and ASCC will be looking at more carefully. The option number 10, and I'll tell you about the votes in a minute. The option number 10 came up several weeks before the final meeting. So in other words, it was not richly discussed by the POG itself because they moved fairly rapidly into voting. It did not receive a site visit. So I do believe in standing on ground to understand it. It's very hard to understand what you're looking at on paper. Few people can do it. Maybe our the resident architect can, but I can't. And so with that proviso, option 10 imagines that at the intersection of Alpine Road and Portola Road, if you're stopped at Portola and looking straight ahead, you would take a driveway and penetrate Hawthorne's there. That means eliminating a number of the oaks because it's quite a substantial elimination of the oaks that are there in order then because you'll have traffic coming 2 ways. And then you turn left. And so this option takes you parallel to Alpine Road down the other direction. In other words, in the direction of Roberts Market. Any questions about that, or is that rough description adequate? As for the voting, well, option 7 had been disadvantaged long before. That was going way up on top of the hill, so that was not considered. No one single person had a 1-4 vote. 12 were dead set against it. Option 8 near Nathorst, so further down, had 10 against. So the 2 that advanced were option number 9. Option number 9 had 13 in favor and 0 against, though it received no number 1s and mostly 3s. Whereas option 10, which was not very well vetted, received 13 in favor and 0 against. It had mostly 1s and 2 2s. So that option is the favored option. And I think that leaves us to reflect on that. An encouragement to everyone present, since my sense is we all care a lot about what happens to that corridor, to spend time out there. And if MidPen, which I hope that they will invite the public back on site for either a specific tour of these areas or a general tour of the parcel, that we take advantage of it and try to get to know what's going on there. The implications will be quite substantial, regardless of where you live in town. It's a very important corridor. The comments that I have heard that are most concerning is what happens as the kids come down from school and cross. There's already a crossing guard at that crosswalk. And this will complicate things considerably. So whereas before, you know, that there's a certain hour of the day that there's a crosswalk, a guard that's needed. Those hours of the day will probably go up if this is put in. So there are a lot of ways to weigh in, and I encourage all of us to stay connected. And with that, I think I'll wrap up my report, but I'd like to open it up for discussion about next steps and to the audience for any questions.
Betsy, where is parking? Number 10 then is right at the intersection?
The 10 is at Alpine Road in Portola. Exactly.
But I have a question, and this is probably something that we can't answer, but may be answered by staff. Is the timing for the conditional use permit? Because there isn't a conditional use permit, on the property, and this, the opening up the open space would necessitate that.
It sure would.
And I have similar concerns around, the current condition of the use permit for Windy Hill. I noted that the open space district is combining this site, into the Windy Hill open space. And I didn't know if that was in some way a way to skirt the conditional use permit process with the town. So I do think that the town needs to help the open space committee, the planning commission, the ASC understand what's coming, and the timing associated with it. Because I know that POG has been working on this for a long time, and there's a long history of planning around the Hawthorne historic kind of portion of the property where the historic buildings are. It just seems like there should be a consolidated understanding, since this is wholly within the jurisdiction of Portola Valley, that the open space district provide more clarity on the plan and their timing. Because the open space district has owned this property for quite a long time, without providing public access. And we're all paying our taxes, but don't have access to the land.
I hear you, Carter. Before I call on Charles, just one quick point of information there. I mean, you're fully right that there will be a conditional use permit that accompanies this parcel. There was, regarding the historic complex, there was a meeting 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, on the historic complex, and not a lot was learned there. They shared a vision statement. They shared that there is an ad hoc. They appointed an ad hoc committee last September. They made it a little hard for me to figure out who's on that ad hoc committee. I think if I apply another hour's worth of time, I'll be able to find the minutes and learn who's on that committee. It's best as I could tell, it's a subcommittee of the board, but I can ratify that later if we're interested. They held this first ever meeting since we began our own process with the 60 some of the 79 acres, less the 13. These 13 acres at the historic complex, what they're envisioning now and what will come before the board apparently as soon as next January is that Willow Commons is in discussion with Midpen for use of the lower barn for community activities for developmentally and intellectually challenged folks. I thought young folks at some time, but now I think it might be adults. in any case, they're in negotiations and or preliminary discussions to be wrapped up soon with a recommendation to the board. So that might actually come together on our watch. In the broad vision statement that they shared, the first and last of the 10 points and 10 points were included the word integration. So I'm sensitive to your point, which is we should look at this as a whole, not in piece. And towards that, they commented that the parking on the 13 acres would be constrained by them. They anticipated very few parking places there, that they would be relying on the Alpine Road Corridor parking lot to handle the parking for use of the historic complex side predominantly. So that might answer some of your questions, Carter. And Charles, thank you for your patience at the podium.
Oh, thank you for discussing this issue.
And for the benefit of those
Charles,
taking notes, do you mind, introducing
I'm,
yourself?
I'm Charles Maroney. I live in Portola Valley Ranch. I want to comment on all of your summary of the last couple meetings was entirely correct. I've been going to these meetings for several years now. I will say that those original spur trails that you discussed that attached to Sweet Springs into the Portola Valley Ranch were actually proposed and preliminary voted on last February, and all approved with all ones. So all three of them had ones. And at that point, my neighbor and I put together a petition for ranch residents, and we were able to get over 100 home owners and a total of 200, almost 200 people to sign the petition, basically opposing those spur trail attachments to Sweet Springs. There are a lot of reasons for that. You know, there's view issues, there's privacy issues, there's use issues, there's a whole bunch of reasons why the ranch was not happy with, or many of those people who signed it were not happy with the proposal. And fortunately, over 2 meetings, we were able to spur many of the POG members to see what we were talking about. And that's why 2 of them were not approved. And 1 of them was preferred to be looked at in a year after the ranch or the Hawthorns open, but they still voted to potentially have that final trail open with the Hawthorns when it opens as well. So I am happy that we were able to sway some opinions. I was disappointed that many members of the POG had not walked those trails or the proposed trails because they were just marked with flags. And so people made these decisions by looking at a map. And your point that this next parking lot, they might have an open house to show it. Mid-Penn has said, no, you can see this from the street. So there's no reason to open this up to the public. So my point to you is looking at really 2 things, which perhaps you can affect. I don't think you can affect the trails because that's part of the issue with the Trails Committee here and then eventually the town council. But the size of the parking lot doesn't, it really seemed like it was a very, like pull it out of thin air. If you look at the other parking lots in the neighborhood, Arostadero on Arostadero Road gets about 200,000 visitors a year. It has a 40-car parking lot. Okay, so Windy Hill, which is 1,000+ acres, many more miles of trails, has a smaller than 50-car parking lot. So why they're putting a 50-car parking lot in, I'm a little bit unsure. And that's probably something that town committees can look at. It doesn't make sense to me. I understand why people don't want street parking, and we see it on Portola Road, and perhaps they're thinking about that. But I think that they're planning on using this as sort of the overflow for Windy Hill and attracting a lot of people to a property that basically has 50 acres, if you exclude the historic area, basically 50 acres of open space. It's not that big. So perhaps in your conversations going forward, you can consider and ask Mid-Penn why exactly and how they came to the conclusion that a 50-car parking lot is appropriate for this small of a space. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Charles, for caring. Absolutely.
My name is Duff Sunheim. I'm the Vice President of the Portola Valley Ranch. And I want to just thank you for your work on this. My daytime role, I'm a federal court mediator and state court settlement judge, and that's why I was asked to join the board, was because of the issues with the Hawthorns and also the ADU unit. And by the way, this brought back memories sitting in those chairs, but when I sat in those chairs as a kid, there was nothing rubbing up against my stomach. So I guess the chairs have changed over the years. But I just want to say what we're focusing on now and the approach that I want to take is one of collaboration, right? What you try to do as a mediator, take it from conflict, compromise where people feel like they're giving something up, to collaboration where everybody's working together for something that they share an interest in. And that's what we're trying to do. As part of this process, our attorney is engaged to find out what the legal requirements are, but one of the reasons I'm here tonight is please don't be scared off by that. I mean, we're just trying to understand, what the legal rules are. And there's great concern that the city of Portola, the town of Portola, has obligations with respect to the maintenance of those trails that hasn't been a top priority. So we're working with Fred Leach, we're working with Sarah, we're working with different people to have an understanding. But the main message I want to deliver tonight is we're here to help. We have 205 residents over there. Charles and others are very actively engaged, and we want to be engaged in a very positive manner to find something, to collaborate, to find something that works. So just wanted to make sure that we deliver that.
Hey, thanks, Mr. Sondheim. Nice to meet you. I didn't catch your first name.
It's Duff as in dumb, ugly, fat.
Thank you, Duff. I'll forget the rest of it, but thank you. You've got a good sense of humor there. I could weigh in on one point that Charles made about the size of the parking lot and just comment that you both are making obviously a lot of positive points in the process and the outcome, as you have illustrated how you've swayed the public opinion. And you can see that in the results of the POG voting. As for the parking lot size, just 2 points. I think that Mid-Penn might feel chastened because of what's been happening over here at Windy Hill and all the overflow parking that we experience acutely in the spring, and how dangerous it's become for passing bicyclists because of the overflow parking on our streets. And with the extra build out, they envision more. So I imagine that they feel a bit stung by undersizing this lot. It is only one or two places shy of 50 because they were forced recently to put in ADA parking and bathrooms. Otherwise, it used to be 50. And there was a vote at the end of the meeting and on June 13th to cap out and max the parking lot to no more than 50 without incenting them to create all 50. So that's still very much open if you want to have impact there. And I see Linda up at the podium.
As many of you know, I did huge developments under the California Environmental Quality Act before I retired, and I'm a retired lawyer, so this is not legal advice. But a couple of the things that MidPen is doing raise questions to me under CEQA. For example, and they will have to comply with CEQA at some level to go forward with this development. They will have to analyze traffic. I've built overpasses with Caltrans, and Caltrans does not like it when you have an intersection where you have to make more than one choice. So when you have bicycles, cars, and school kids, you're starting to create problems. But most importantly, I think underscoring Carter's point about the MidPen looking at this as a whole, not just trying to do the trails part now and the historical part. That's classic segmentation under CEQA, and it's just a red flag as not things you should not do under CEQA. Similarly, if they're trying to get this big parking lot for use elsewhere, that also is another really serious red flag under CEQA. So I just hope that in your conversations about this, you will think about where this project will go under CEQA. Perhaps you have to get legal advice on that, and things will have to get more concrete, but I want to point those issues out to you.
I think that's very powerfully put. Thank you, Linda.
Yeah,
The
and-
committee and
And if I could through the chair, I really feel strongly about this, that the council, either, through the town manager or through the building and planning director needs to make a significant outreach, to the board, of trustees for the open space district and insist, that the POG process, not be, the design process, for their development, that since this is wholly within, the town of Portola Valley, that it needs to go through, the typical process for, private property owner, that the approval process is actually, worked through, with the town committees, the ASCC, and the planning commission, because I believe that, without it, they're going to be spending money on, options, and opportunities that may or may not, be something that they can follow through with implementation, and I've been upset, individually and personally, about, the segmentation, of the 13 acres versus the open space, and the potential that they have, to participate, in housing. The employees of the district, are some of those people that should be, should have an opportunity, to live in the town. And I do believe the open space district has, an obligation, to do, something, to, afford their employees, an ability to, work within the district.
we hear you. Unfortunately, I guess they're quite constrained by that conservation easement and are not allowed to bring any more utilities on site than exist today, which is part of what has bogged down the improvements to the old house. So they are between a rock and a hard place in a couple of instances here. There've been times when I've thought, Hawthorne's was given this property, and sometimes a gift is not a gift.
Well, they're also, the trustee, and the owner of the conservation easement, is the Peninsula Open Space Trust, which, essentially are, mostly are the same constituents. So I do believe, that with a more open and fluid process, where all of the parties, including, the trustee of that conservation easement, would be participating, in the meetings, for a more global and more, community-based response, that a better solution, would come out of that. 'Cause I believe that the segmentation, of who's responsible for this and who's responsible for this is going to end up, with a less than stellar response. And I know that it has, and it's been what has, stymied movement. It has also, used up most of what it was set aside for the preservation and protection, of the historic buildings, already before they've ever, seen the public.
I hear you. Powerfully put. Thank you. I remember that line of thinking because we'll be putting together a letter to the town council. In terms of timing, bringing these thoughts, I mean, this has been a wonderful sneak preview of the impact that we can all have at the study session. I think giving MidPen a lot of good feedback up front allows them to tack their approach. And so I'd highly encourage you to play a part in that conversation, whether we weigh in as a committee, because Catherine and I and a group of, what were we, 7, 8 representatives from various town committees have an ad hoc committee, are members of an ad hoc committee together, and are also divining a way to approach our town with constructive feedback. On some, we've aligned on some things and we have not aligned on other things. And so we have yet to devise the MidPen voting approach, the 1 to 6 voting approach. Isn't it? Oh, wow. I was fascinated. So, with that, a rich conversation. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, committee members. Our next regularly scheduled meeting would be the first Thursday of September. Are any of you aware that that would not work? It's September the 5th. No? Hearing no votes, then, no no's, then I will be circling back for a September 5 meeting, or please let me know by text or email if it doesn't work. And with that, I adjourn the meeting. Do I hear a motion? Excuse me. Move to adjourn. A second? Thank you. All in favor? Unanimously approved. Good night, all.
The last time it rained, I was at the corner there at Portola Road and Alpine where the kids cross. It was a muddy mess with the drain coming down and steep and. Well. What makes you is that. Mad Mr. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So what was the concept of or selected? Yeah. And I think it was great.
Gonna end up doing something with further effect.
Yeah.
How would we do that? Yeah. Well, what's the, how many committees are actually involved? Well, that makes sense.